Hello, everybody. We are back with the Tokyo FinTech podcast. And today is the first time we have two guests. We welcome Alex Hui, who is the director and the co-founder at Moonstake, a staking operator incorporated in the Cayman Islands with an office in Singapore. Hello, Alex.
Hi, I'm Alex. Thanks for having me.
And then we've also welcomed Haichao Zhu, who's with the Algorand Foundation, and you're based in China.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you very much.
Welcome. We want to talk about two things. One is staking business, and the second is then obviously driving a bit deeper into Algorand. To kick things off, many people probably know blockchain at this point, but not necessarily all the mechanics that drive it. Alex, maybe we can ask you to explain what staking is and why such a hot topic at this point.
Yeah, okay, sure. So the traditional proof of work is, well, there is many consensus model in blockchain, as you know, and one of them is the proof of work, which is pioneered by Bitcoin. The proof of work is like, okay, you mine the coin with the hash power or the process time by a computer. Of course, it uses a lot of energy, and in some cases, it's not totally fair because, well, the more hash power you have, the more powerful you are, right? However, there is another model called proof of stake, and the concept say that, okay, a person can validate a block transaction according to the quantity of the coins they have. And also there is algorithm as well. So validation power is not proportion to the hash power solely, but also other factors. So it's more fair and also it's a good alternative to the proof of work.
And how do you make a business out of that?
You know, the goal is we try to create the largest staking pool network in Asia. And you know, with the extensive network, we hope to create a robust environment for all our users and also the cryptocurrency holders to increase their likelihood of receiving the block rewards. Because proof of stake say that if you can validate something and then you receive some kind of rewards. So we're creating a larger pool for validating the cryptocurrency. We can receive a high portion of rewards and also help the user to make it the staking more efficient.
Got it. Statistically, you should get over time the same amount, but you're able to smooth out the returns if I look at a single coin. And then obviously as a pool, you're also covering more than one coin, right? You're planning to cover a universe of coins. And what are you looking at in terms of the whole population that you want to support?
Well, the figure is hard to say because their environment is changing every day, as you know, in blockchain industry. But we try to form strategic partnership with a number of high quality coins, where we already form a partnership with Cosmos, IrisNet, and also others as well, like Cardano. So we are trying to form this kind of partnership so that to create a more efficient staking pool for our users.
Haichao, let's continue with you. You're working for the Algorand Foundation, and there's also Algorand Inc., which is really where the professor sits and the original brain trust that has developed the protocol. So what is the differentiation? What is the responsibility of Inc. versus the foundation?
Sure. Basically, you're absolutely right that there are two entities behind this Algorand project. And one is Algorand Inc. and another one is Algorand Foundation. So Algorand Inc. is just a kind of like a normal company that is registered in Boston, where all the talents from MIT and Harvard are. Our two members, most of them came from MIT and or Harvard. That company is a profitable company. The goal is to build software infrastructures for broader sense is FinTech, but more specifically speaking, is building blockchain technology enabled platforms and tools that will fulfill our vision, which is borderless economy where assets are transacted frictionless, better future that we are envisioning right now. And for the Algorand Inc., which is a non-profitable foundation registered in Singapore, and it's run by a few dozen people who are proficient in research and finance and a little bit of technology. And our job is to build the whole ecosystem around these Algorand technologies to empower the participants in the ecosystem to solve their problems and to incubate them. So this is the basics of these two entities.
So the Inc. is the infrastructure, really the protocol and all the enhancements that came now also with 2.0. And then your job is to build the ecosystem, everybody who uses that platform to build a specific application.
That is correct.
Singapore is an interesting choice. I'm not a foundation and legal expert, but obviously 3-4 years back whenever somebody created a foundation, it was typically Switzerland rather than Singapore.
I'm also not a legal expert, but I think just Singapore is just a better choice in terms of compliance and also tax. And also our CEO is based out of Hong Kong, so it's closer to us, and I'm based out of China. So
we're all in Asia here, so we're happy it's closer to us. With what Alex said already about proof of stake, what makes Algorand different and special in the the proof of stake spectrum?
Sure. The proof of stake mechanism used in the Algorand blockchain is something we call pure proof of stake. So essentially, it means that we do not add extra incentive to the proof of stake mechanism. We just want to use the intrinsic incentive it already has. Let me explain this. So at this point, there's also actually a paper presented in this year's Stanford Blockchain Conference from a guy named David Schwartz, who's working at Repo. And he also has this kind of point of view that we should not add an extra layer of incentive on top of the existing natural incentive. So what is this existing natural incentive? For people who's holding a certain cryptocurrency, the currency is not just kept in your wallet. It is also kept on a specific blockchain. And that blockchain is actually providing you with a custodial service that keep your assets safe, your coins safe. On that sense, you might want to spend some resource or money on keeping that custodial safe. Just like you want to put a password on your bank account, and also you want to pay some money to keep your password safe. So on this sense that people have the incentive already to keep their assets safe, which in the case of blockchain is to keep the blockchain safe. When people are trying to do that, their option is to run a node in the blockchain network. They will run it at their own interest, which is to protect their assets. We believe that this kind of incentive already support the safety of the whole network, which also support the safety of their assets. So there's no need to add another layer of incentive on top of that to make things worse. If you do that, the result might be worse, as we discussed already, and also as David has discussed in his paper. If you try to magnify the incentives, or if you try to add a staking and slashing mechanism to the protocol, then you could make it more messed up. Just that's the conclusion. I think I will send you a link to that paper. Maybe you can put it in the description of the podcast, maybe.
We'll do that. So if you listen to this now, look down in the description. There will be a link or maybe a few by the time we're done here for further reading material. Next question, just to clarify, Algorand is completely pre-mined and there's no inflation. Is that correct?
All the tokens are pre-mined, but they are not fully entered into circulating. There is a plan for circulating, which there are basically 5 channels for the tokens to enter into circulating. The first part is to build the ecosystem, which means the tokens will be used to award the participants who have contributions to the whole ecosystem. Those include the early backers who are running the relay node, which are very important nodes in the network, and also the later developers, and also our ambassadors, Algorand ambassadors, who are helping us to build the community. We have allocated these tokens as awards to these contributors. And another part is retained for the Algorand Foundation and Algorand Inc. Small part of it is the compensation, and a large part of it is to keep the whole network running and to keep the whole foundation and Inc. running.
I think 25% was allocated to public sale over the next 5 years, spread out a bit. Just contrasting that with Tezos, which has a 5% inflation, I think, and 1% of that goes to the staking as a reward, and 4% goes into ecosystem development on an annual basis. Actually, if you're not staking because there's more Tezos every year, you actually subject to inflation, right? Like with US dollar or other fiat currency, while
exactly
you have a static supply where the circulation increases obviously over time.
Exactly. Whereas in the Algorand, you can compare this to the universal basic income, because like in the Algorand, the awards are distributed to all of the token holders, no matter you are running a node or not. So as long as you are holding a token, you are qualified to claim rewards for participating into the network consensus. This is actually also aligned with the design of the pure proof of stake.
And so if the staking rewards get funded out of the coins that are already there, won't they run out at some point in time in the future, and there won't be staking rewards anymore?
Well, maybe in the future, if we see that some situation we didn't predict, then maybe we could adjust the token distribution mechanism. But at the moment, right now, we don't have any plan to add some other mechanism to distribute tokens in some other ways.
Okay, thank you. Alex, let me come back to you on that. Based on that explanation and the pure proof of stake versus the delegated proof of stake, like specifically in the context of Algorand, there's a role of a staking pool to smooth out the returns because you have in aggregate a higher allocation, but because it's not delegated, there isn't really that intermediate role then. From an economic perspective, because you're clearly running this as a business, are there more attractive coins to stake than Algorand because of the way the protocol is constructed?
Algorand is one of the leaders in this industry as well. So we really want to work with all kinds of blockchain leaders to refine our business model and also to explore the possibilities in the future. Well, first of all, I think the project is very, very high quality and they can inspire us to be a better company. Then, of course, we really want to work with them because I think forming strategic partnership is the mutual relationship. We really want to explore the possibilities in the blockchain industry because it's still very young, as you know. Of course, business-wise, it may not exactly is like, well, there are many things we still have to study, but at the same time, we really want to discuss with Algorand on what we can do in the future.
Got it. If you have a number of algos to stake, at this point, there's probably not much else but to stake them. But given the focus of Algorand also on building a complete DeFi system, I think it's very fair to assume that even sometime in 2020, you get similar protocols coming out as like MakerDAO on Ethereum, right? Lending protocols. Then you basically have a choice with your coins. You can either stake them or you can lend them. And the economic decision would be to do whatever gives you the greater return. So in case that lending has a higher return than staking, would you rather lend than stake?
Well, at the moment, we are still focusing on the staking part. And of course, for the lending, there are many regulations and also there is many things we really have to study before we move on to this part because it will become more complicated. So we want to start with staking first and then move to other models in the future.
Thank you. Haichao, then continuing with that theme again, looking around the Algorand documentation, it clearly stresses the DeFi aspect. Other blockchains might talk about traceability of food and then get to bananas on the blockchain and all these beautiful things. Algorand specifically talks about a decentralized financial system. And I think the first thing we saw was tokenization of 60 million real estate with Asset Block. Tether is available now on Algorand. What is the next things that you see coming? What's in the pipeline?
Sure. First of all, the topic we are focusing on is not just the DeFi, this thing, because DeFi kind of represents, it represents two things. One is a decentralized financial infrastructure on chain, which are DEX, decentralized exchanges, or lending and borrowing facilities. And also it represents the decentralized financial assets on chain, including like MakerDAO, decentralized stablecoin. So these two we are definitely focusing on, we are working on, but we are more focused on the bigger picture, which is the finance itself. So this includes, like, as you mentioned, Tether is a good example. It's actually, you can call it sci-fi. It's a kind of centralized finance because it's backed by US dollars. So we are focusing on the whole spectrum of finance, actually. Tether is a good step because we need stablecoin on chain for people to exchange with different assets. And block asset is another good example. We are trying to tokenize real estate assets on chain for people to trade it with less friction. Another thing we have done is to cooperate with this country named Marshall Islands. So they are issuing a CBDC, which stands for Central Bank Digital Currency. That currency is gonna be built not on Algorand platform directly, but using Algorand technology, something called co-chain. So it's like a blockchain framework you can use to build your own blockchain. And they're going to use this Algorand technology to build their digital currency system. And it will be launched maybe at the end of this year or earlier next year. DeFi and sci-fi, these two roles, both of them we are taking on. National currency, we are definitely actively looking for partners. Apart from that, we also have some traditional finance business such as microfinance. It's called MoneyRun, and we are working with them to build their microfinance system using Algorand technology as well. So yes, a lot of them, and we are constantly looking for more use cases, and hopefully we could have something realizable at the end of this year. Right now, we have just started to partner with all these players. We are starting to build these things. At the end of this year and early next year, we will see a lot of applications coming up.
So you mentioned co-chains already, and that's for me an aspect that's very interesting. And maybe the only comparison, probably more out there, but the only comparison I have in my mind is Polkadot and Substrate, where you have like side chains, right? It always becomes a philosophical debate of public versus private chains. With the co-chains, you're basically combining both concepts. Public Algorand chain that is permissionless, and you can run co-chains that are private sets that benefit from the security of the Algorand ecosystem. ecosystem, but then are permissioned to specific parties. And so any industry is concerned around privacy of information, whether it's like medical records or even financial transactions,
Exactly.
to a certain extent, can straddle these two sides of the same coin and build an efficient system.
Also, another product is Cosmos SDK, and that one is actually easier to use from a perspective of developer. A lot of people are using Substrate because of Polkadot, but Cosmos SDK is easy to use, and we are Algorand. We are trying to learn from these products and to make this coaching product better than all of them.
That was the second aspect of what you mentioned, to build an ecosystem and to get more apps being built. The key question is, how do you poach people from Ethereum and get them to build on your platform, given that Ethereum is still the largest ecosystem, or you get new people? But what are the initiatives that you're driving to get developers on the platform?
Sure. So first of all, to have these people build on your platform, you need to prepare enough tools and facilities for them, which means wallets, explorers, like MetaMask, the web browser plugin wallet. So we have set up a grant program, developer grant program for people to apply. And if they want to build such tools for us, they can apply to this grant and get some financial funding for their project. And after this step, we need to talk to the real application developers. You are absolutely correct that most of them are on Ethereum right now. So our strategy is to, on the one hand, talk with them, these players, and to see if they have some problems with their existing applications and products, such as if the Ethereum's throughput rate is limiting their user base growth, if the finality transaction confirmation time is too slow for them to build their applications. And if they do have these kind of problems, we will talk them into a new solution called Algorand, which is faster, which is cheaper. And on the other hand, we are talking with new application developers because we believe that, the competition between public chains are not over yet, because we believe that in the future there will be a better application that can beat all of the existing application right now. And we are fighting to look for that application to that specific cryptocurrency. And we are in hope of that we can find that application and bring that into our platform.
It's clearly easier to build a proof of stake chain and protocol from scratch rather than trying to do what Ethereum is trying to do and going from a proof of work to proof of stake. And the multiple year-long roadmap doesn't necessarily instill that much confidence to me personally. If I had the choice to go on something that is built for purpose, maybe that's attractive enough. The other interesting thing I think I saw doing the research leading up to this conversation, you actually have a Python library, PyTeal, to write smart contracts. So that opens up, first of all, the whole quants that are in the capital markets business, and then obviously all the data scientists that love Python as well. So having something like that where you can construct smart contracts with a language that you're actually very familiar with, that should ease the adoption curve.
Yeah, that is correct. And I'm pretty surprised that you learned about that, actually. So this is a part that I mentioned, the tools and the facilities for the developers, because we're talking about developers from different industries. They always have a preference on the development language they use for their applications. For example, Python, you mentioned, right? Python is mostly used in the financial industry. A lot of people use that to analyze data. So we definitely have Python SDK and PyTeal, as you mentioned, which is for developing smart contract on Algorand. For some enterprise users, kind of the traditional systems are always based on Java. Although we don't use it a lot these days, but we still have a Java SDK for these applications to use. So it's easier for them to integrate to their systems. And apart from that, we have JavaScript and also Golang, which is a backend language. So we have all these options for developers, and we're trying to push forward to the next step, which is to talk with them and to bring them in.
Once all this blows over with the pandemic, you should do a developer workshop in Tokyo here.
Yeah, we wanted to do it actually. We were going to Tokyo, but because of the coronavirus situation, postponed to maybe September. We will see you in September.
Hopefully, would be good. Alex, coming back to you once more, staking business. I think you mentioned you have 2 coins live now. You're planning more. What is the roadmap for building out the business, and how do you measure scale or success at the end of the day? How do you get people to invest in that pool?
Well, I think as Haichao said, what the infrastructure is very important. Well, the adaptation of the blockchain is also depends on the infrastructure. The easier for the user to use it, the better it is. So we are now focusing our effort on building the integration of the wallet and also, well, for example, we've already released a Moonstake mobile wallet on iOS and Android, and already developed the apps for Moonstake and also for the BinaryStar. So we try to expand on this infrastructure first and to make the user experience as smooth as possible. By doing that, we really want to have seamless experience for our users to take the coin with their own wallet and with their existing way of doing things. By doing that, we really want to expand. We don't have a very concrete number at the moment because we just start, and also it's very hard to see in like the future. At the moment, the situation is changing so fast these days because various factors. But we are building a lot of infrastructure at the moment, and also we'll build some enterprise wallet. We will have the web wallet like April, and for BinaryStar, we will build a wallet. We'll probably finish in May. So there are many things we're working on.
Oh, I see a BinaryStar wallet launch party coming up there. Because you're with proof of stake, you're not that dependent on the electricity prices, while proof of work, the energy consumption, of course, is next to the hardware, the biggest driver. If you can talk about that really, where do you locate your servers for this business?
Our main activities will be carried out in Singapore at the moment. Then, of course, we will build our presence in Asia, and we also have a very strong presence in Hong Kong because I basically are based in Hong Kong. And with the partnership with BinaryStar, of course, we want to carry out activities in Japan as well. But of course, there are many regulations we have to handle in the first place. And primarily, it will be Singapore at this stage one.
Okay. And so you see these as the primary markets for your business as well, Singapore, Hong Kong, and Japan?
Asia in general, I should say, because the application of blockchain is very fast in Asia, and so we'll focus the area like this. For future, maybe we will target also Korea, yeah.
Of course.
So Korea, Japan, yeah, Singapore. These are the percentage of the blockchain user are relatively high in this area.
Let's talk a bit about version 2.0, Haichao. It was released in November only, so it's pretty fresh. 2019 was really a super active year, it seems, right? It was an initial public sale through Dutch auction, June 2019, and then in November release of 2.0, which has three components: the Algorand Standard Assets, atomic transfers, and then the smart contracts. And that's significant development in a short period of time, but really provides all the infrastructure for what you talked about previously. Are these components done, or is this a first version and there's a defined roadmap for what other functionality will be added?
It's called 2.0, but it's actually the first after the mainnet launch. If you consider mainnet the 1.0, and these features are included in 2.0, and I assure you there are definitely 3.0 coming up, which includes more features in the future. So these 2.0 features, as you mentioned, the standard Algorand Standard Assets is for developers and the users to issue their own assets on Algorand blockchain. And these assets are issued in a standard forms. Just to compare with the assets issuance on Ethereum, where you build a customized smart contract on the blockchain to issue the assets. Algorand, you are using the native function of the blockchain. So it's not based on a third-party smart contract, but the native function of the blockchain. And the benefits is that it's more safe, it's easier to do it, to issue the token, to issue the assets. It has a standard structure. So all the assets are the same, so they can transact with each other, and they are compatible with all the tools and the facilities. And the second feature is atomic transfer. So this is also one of the essential features you have to have when you are trying to do asset transactions, just like when I'm trading some asset A with your asset B, and we need to make sure that these two transactions on the blockchain are happening at the same time, right? So when you're trying to do this on other blockchains, typically you need to use also a third-party smart contract that involves a technique called hash time lock, and that technique costs a lot in terms of both money and time. So we made that function into a native function on Algorand, and it saves time, saves money, and makes this whole process easier. And the third one is the smart contract. This is where we give you more flexibility to realize your applications on chain, and you can deploy your own smart contract and to realize your customized functionalities. And also, it's very easy to use. It's a native function.
And so on the standard assets that you provide, I think there were two characteristics. One is the classic fungible, non-fungible tokens, and the other is restricted and non-restricted. So 2 dimensions, 2x2 matrix. All of that is built into the protocol natively?
Yeah, that's correct. Well, basically, we have a lot of kinds of assets in the financial world, like debts, bonds, securities, payables or receivables. So all these assets, they have different attributes to them. For example, securities, if a security is issued like under an exemption, like Reg A or Reg A plus, Reg D, then there's a requirement to the holders who are holding these securities and also the buyers who are trying to buy these securities. Those compliance regulations usually includes like KYC, know your customers, and anti-money laundering laws, AML. To hold these kind of tokens that represent these securities or buy them, you need to also comply to these regulations. But how do you do it on chain? Like for example, on Ethereum, if you transfer a token to me, I don't have a choice but to accept it. Even though I don't have done any KYC or AML procedures, I can still accept tokens from you. To be fully compliant with the regulation, you need to have these features on chain that can restrict you from accepting any tokens, any assets. So this is part that Algorand is trying to realize, is trying to bring on chain. And also for the fungible and non-fungible part, those are just really try to represent different kinds of assets. So fungible tokens may be like securities, bonds, and non-fungible tokens may be like horse or some collectible assets.
There's always the question around forking, right? If you don't like a blockchain, it's a public, typically I can take the source code, can do a fork. Algorand has proven through formal method that it's not forkable. And that is beyond my mathematics education, unfortunately. Can you explain how you can formally prove that a chain is not forkable?
This involves a little bit technical thing about the consensus algorithm. The name Algorand actually represents both the Algorand public blockchain and also the Algorand consensus algorithm. One feature of the Algorand consensus algorithm is that there will be no forks in terms of on the infrastructure layer, on the consensus layer. That if you compare with Bitcoin, there will be forks at some point of the time, because when people are accepting different blocks from the network and they are agreeing on different chains of blocks, there will be forks. In the Algorand consensus algorithm, such things will not happen because, well, the nature of the algorithm, just trying to avoid getting to the technical details of it. So maybe just briefly explain how it works. Algorand consensus algorithm is like the first consensus algorithm that involves cryptographic mechanisms into it. So we use cryptographic sortation, which is kind of like a lottery. So all the node runners in the network will draw a lottery in their local computer, and they will know if they can participate into the consensus at this round. And if they do, this subset of the node runners will do the consensus algorithm, and that is a deterministic consensus algorithm, which means only one block will be generated out of that round of consensus. So we just do this in turns. Every turn we do a round of cryptographic sortation to select a subset of a committee of nodes, and those nodes do the consensus. So in this way, we will avoid forks. We do a lot of forks on a high layer of protocol, which means that you can always take the code of Algorand and to start another network and to run your own Algorand blockchain. So that is permitted, and no one can stop you from doing that because all the codes are open source. And also when we are having co-chain live, maybe that is even easier for you to do it. You can just take a co-chain and start your own blockchain.
Thanks for the separation of the two ways of forking. One is the intentional fork, like getting Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin SV out of Bitcoin and really create a separate network that has its own token. And the other is as part of the protocol and Bitcoin, as you said, you can get orphan blocks. And the Algorand algorithm is the one shot, one round validation and submits the block. That's why there can't be these orphan blocks. It's just like a funny fact when you read about this, given that your founder is a Turing Award winner in 2012, which is like the Nobel Prize for computing. Your protocol, though, is non-Turing complete.
Yeah, that's actually pretty interesting. This is the first time I heard someone put it in this way. Turing Award and the Turing Complete are actually both aligning with the same person, the same Turing person. So Turing Award, is just as a memory to honor the great Turing Allen, kind of like the father of computer. And the Turing Complete actually represents that the machine, the computer you are building here, give you the ability to program all kinds of applications you want. As a matter of fact, actually, all of the the virtual machines on the blockchains in either Bitcoin or Ethereum, all of them are all non-Turing complete actually, because they're trying to limit your ability of building things in either time. Like for example, there is a gas limit on Ethereum, which limits how much computing resource you can use in each of the contract, or they are limiting your operation sites. For example, Bitcoin, they only provides a small set of operation codes that you can use to program your applications. So in the case of Algorand, it is more similar to Bitcoin, where we provide pretty elegant sets of operation codes that you can use to program applications, and which we think is already enough for all the applications on the spectrum. And if you try that, you can actually feel that even though we are trying to sacrifice a little bit flexibility here by involving a non-Turing complete virtual machine, but we can give you a more convenient way to program it and also a safer way to develop it. So we basically treat flexibility for convenience and security.
Alex, maybe this is the question I should have asked at the very beginning, but clearly when you have a plan to build a new business, you've got lots of choices, and you made the choice to do proof of stake rather than do proof of work. Can you explain how your decision-making path came and why do you decided not to do any proof of work?
I think the decision is obvious if you look at the future of the blockchain, because now a lot of blockchain is still on proof of stake, and also I think it's one of the brightest future in blockchain industry as well. As you know, Algorand built their whole business model on this proof of stake as well. So I believe that their decision is also very right. I think because blockchain will be one of the prominent future, the adoption is quite slow at this moment, but I think there are more and more people and also more enterprise is using this technology, and also they're using it under our nose. And sometimes they adopt it, and then but still people didn't aware of it. In future, this will be, and also all the projects and all the blockchain, they need to be on the consensus model. So that's why it's one of the very promising one if you follow this thinking or trend. So that's why I'm quite interested I really want to build a robust environment for this kind of consensus model and then build a solid business on top of it.
Maybe you can take out your crystal ball for a second. We obviously have the halving coming up on Bitcoin very soon, sometime in What is your prediction? What will happen in the miner landscape?
I don't have a crystal ball, so I really don't know what the future will be. But I think the more interest people are in blockchain, and there will be a lot of traditional mindset will come into this industry. As you know, when in the first 10 years of blockchain, we have a new mindset to see things. If you understand what I say, the traditional financial system is dominated by a certain kind of mindset. So if those kind of people come into this industry, I think it will shape some paradigm in this industry as well. As we already see that there will be some coupling or decoupling of things. I don't know about the price, but I will see there will be a big shock to the blockchain industry maybe in a year or two in the future.
One thing to matter is obviously the market cap, which can be a bit arbitrary at any point in time. But the other aspect is the hard to measure mind share. People in the ecosystem, when you talk to them, clearly Algorand has lots of people paying attention, right? Which is maybe they're not dipping their toe into the water just yet, which is Haichao's job to change. But certainly aware and observing. The question for both of you, if you have to name the top 3 or 4 protocols in the proof of stake world, what do you see as the strongest protocols coming right now?
Well, we are building partnerships. As you know, we have already built partnerships with like Tesla, Centrality, and Harmony. So we are not we cannot say which is the best because we really want to build partnership with strong projects. But as you can see on our website, moonstake.io, we are building good relationship with many strong protocols at this moment. And of course, we really want to build partnership with Algorand as well because they are very strong tech and also they are building something awesome to the industry.
Very diplomatic answer. Thank you. Actually, I don't want to put you on the spot equally. You have an allegiance with Algorand, but are there any other protocols that you're following more closely than others, maybe because they have some interesting ideas?
I'm really looking forward to Polkadot because they're telling a different story, which is the interoperability, cross-chain. Really looking forward to their mainnet launch and to see if the market can verify their story. So that's one. Another one is, I think, Ethereum 2.0. I'm interested in that because I'm pretty negative about this shift from 1.0 to 2.0, and I wanna say if it will has negative effect on Ethereum or positive effect. These two chains, I think their mainnet launch of Ethereum 2.0 and Polkadot will verify a lot of the things that I have on mind. So I'm interested in that.
I tend to agree. I'm not a blockchain developer, so my technical understanding is limited to some extent. But given that we had DEF CON in Osaka last year, event, and all the sessions that the big brains in the Ethereum world gave about the roadmap didn't really make me comfortable. Didn't feel the story was consistent. So I'm also curious to see how they pull it off. I think the Polkadot point was interesting, because I also find it intellectually very interesting, this cross-chain operability.
Because it's kind of like, if you think about it, Polkadot is actually trying to create another kinds of needs. In the case of Ethereum is trying to meet the needs of the person who are trying to issue tokens and also build decentralized applications on the blockchain, using the blockchain as a decentralized computer. But the Polkadot is trying to create another kind of needs, which is that they believe those developers will not use a single blockchain for their application, but they will have their own blockchains all over the place, and their work is to connect all these blockchains. I think it's pretty interesting to say that if the market is gonna react as they wanted, that all these chains will be connected together and to create some emergence effect. And if they do, then I think it's pretty fascinating for us as well, because considering we are also building the co-chain, which is kind of the same category of product. So that's pretty important for us to learn from their mainnet launch.
Right. To some extent, we haven't really figured out what to do with a single chain. So might be very visionary, but also might still be 3 or 4 years ahead of the actual demand. We'll see. But as you say, they might actually create demand that is latent, but we're not necessarily seeing it. And it's a marketplace, right? So that's a fantastic thing. And it's a marketplace of ideas and concepts. And it's just interesting to see that evolving very quickly. Super, gentlemen. It was a very good conversation. I appreciate the time. Thank you very much for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.